Hey, welcome everybody to our special EZRA event panel for International Coaching Week. And we have some incredible coaches here from our Americas and EMEA regions. So just do a couple of quick intros and then we'll talk about what today's themes are. And so for myself, I am Nelson. I am EZRA's Coach Partnership Manager in the Americas, where I oversees coach performance and development, coach education, and and help with part of our team with creating a lot of community events like we have today. Joining me on our panel today are three incredibly amazing coaches on our EZRA team. First I'll start with Asuta Kuka, who is an executive coach in our EMEA bench, as well as the founder and director of Kokoro Consultancy and is based in London, UK. So welcome, Asuta. And we have Dr. Gina Chang Campbell, who's an executive coach and facilitator, and co-founder of Inclusive Leadership Studio, who's on our Americas bench and based in Toronto. Hey, Gina. And Troy Taylor, who is an executive coach, facilitator, corporate trainer. Taylor, and he runs he's the founder of Tailor Made Coaching Group. And we have just found out today, Troy and I have the exact same birthday. Yeah. Very cool. So welcome, coaches. Also want to give a shout out to Sarah Rosen, who is here with us too on our marketing team, who is the one behind the scenes putting this all together for us and doing all the great work to create these opportunities for all of us here today. So, the goal of today is really just, to look at, why coaching is crucial in navigating the challenges and changes in today's business world. And so we're going to take a look at it from just three different streams. One being just the importance of coaching in times of change, to learning a little bit more about talent management, and then exploring diversity in leadership. Awesome. So we will start off with just looking at it from coaching in times of change. And so Asunta, I'll go to you first and just start off with a question of, what do you think are some key benefits of continuous coaching during times of change?
So I would say straight away it varies as change vary, right? So change is it's a human need. We feel the need to change, and coaching really help us, support us in terms of approaching change. But also change, yes, it is a human need, it also presents different challenges. And I think is where coaching really can support us to look at challenges from a different way. So if we think about change and talking about change in coaching, coaching really is that we always say coaching is a safe space where we can kind of reframe things. So we can see perhaps challenges as opportunity to grow. And I will say that one of the key benefits is actually that, kind of developing awareness through coaching. What's change for us? How can we look at change from a different angle, really? And it's interesting. We had some tech problems today, and I was just thinking, what would I say to myself, right? Like framing a little bit this kind of situation. And actually, coaching helps us actually with that, even kind of helping you to embrace complexity and even love complexity and change. Sometimes change really triggers the kind of fear in us and people because it's unknown. It's uncertain. We don't know what it is. And so there is that kind of maybe paradox, accountability, something unknown, something that we really fear, but also something that perhaps we can learn to love. So there is a reframing going on, which I think is the magic of coaching.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Listen to that's great insight. Gina or Troy, anything to add to that?
I would just add, to really emphasize what Asunta was saying. I completely agree with everything she shared about just the human part of going through change. And I think a lot of people, when we think of business leaders, especially managing and leading through different types of transitions in the workplace, it's so tricky. And because it's such a human emotion, I think we often rush to, how do I get my team through this without first reconciling, how am I getting through this? And so, as Asunta said, that uncertainty, that, facing something that is different from what was before and knowing I have the responsibility to take others through it, coaching gives that safe space to talk through, how am I feeling about it? And that's so much more, it's going to make me so much more effective and impactful as someone who's going to lead and take others through change if I first, grow and develop self-awareness around how I'm facing it. That's building that resilience so I can help others do so in turn as well.
Yeah, I would just quickly add, just to add to that, with companies are moving at a faster pace, right, to keep up with trends, competition, and of course AI. And a lot of companies are demanding more of their workforce, departments and units. And although the pace has sped everything up, that doesn't fundamentally change how humans think, process, and communicate, right? And so because of these several factors, people are overwhelmed. And when we're in a space of coaching, what that does is help them, people or leaders, to build that internal capacity while giving them time and space to think and make those decisions in real time, because everyone says, I don't have time to slow down and think. And so coaching helps real time in situations like that.
Great. Thanks, guys. So let me jump to another question in the same area. So, and Gina, maybe I'll start with you on this. What are some common misconceptions about coaching in the workplace, especially during times in transition?
I think especially during times of change, there's a misconception that coaching is something that can be falling off the table. Like, we don't have time for it, we're not going to do it. I would argue, actually, no, you need to double down on it now. It's even more critical that you protect and defend that coaching space for all of the reasons, that my fellow coaches here have just mentioned. As what Troy just delineated, I think perfectly describes it. You need that protected space and time that is safe for that internal processing to happen so that you can practically apply it to what's going on around you. And it's one of those, it seems like you're spending time, but in the long term, it's going to save time because you're going to be able to be better able to manage your own self and your own emotions as you're going through that, to again turn around and help others to do it. So I think it's just not the time. That's the biggest misconception. It's not the time to stop coaching. It's the time to really ensure that you're protecting coaching and that you're giving it your full intention and being purposeful around how you're using that time and space effectively.
Yeah.
Can I build on that?
Yeah, please do.
No, I totally agree with and in fact, maybe one of the things that really come up during time of transition and change is also that people wait until there is an issue to have coaching. It is like, we have coaching because there is a problem. It's not really like this. Coaching is not just to fix something, and very often it's not about fixing something anyway. And so there is really that kind of long-term looking at the future and understanding what's going on rather than waiting until there is something that needs to be fixed. And it's also not a magic word either. So it's not that you got immediate results after one session, two sessions. There is work to be done. There is inner work. There is energy to invest as well in thinking, reflecting, and commitment.
Yeah, and I would just add that, everything has to be done real time. What can we get rid of? Sometimes that's coming from a sense of resources, a change in the market. We're getting leaner, but we still have to do more. And so, coaching is one of those things that actually can still support real time and those lean time, and things are getting complex when people still have to have capacity and still make those decisions and still move forward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I listen to what you said too about, I find, especially in those times of transitions with some of the clients that I've worked with in the past, it's been that come fix us or come fix me kind of, where everything is like in a bit of more of that, like panic mode. So like, yeah, I think that's like a really, really great point as well. And just one more question within the coach in times of change section here. What we're looking at is, and open to anybody, how can organizations implement a culture of continuous coaching?
I would say first you have to be committed, right? You have to identify that these are areas that we want to continue to get better, and like anything else, it's a focus. Also, it's a commitment, right? And so if you're committed to that, and then how are you going to approach it? You know, is it a overall culture thing, which obviously would take more time? Are you bringing in coaches? Are you going to have a coaching philosophy? I've worked with companies where we brought in a coaching model to help the people managers that rolled down and became a part of the culture. So companies that I work with that are fast paced, and I'm sure like me and my colleagues here have, what's one of those things that we can put in that is really going to be self-sustaining, because ultimately that's what they're looking for. So I would say really it starts with the commitment that you committed and ready to do it.
I agree with Troy. It's to be continuous. I see it as needing to be embedded and threaded into the company culture. There's different ways of doing that. And again, to his point, there are different models that can be adopted, but I think the alignment is critical. And the embedding in culture, that's vital, because that means that everyone's speaking the same language when it comes to coaching, that there isn't a difference of understanding of when we say coaching, what do we mean by that? When we talk about, you know, having a coach approach or a coach-like behaviors, especially when you're a people leader, does everyone, you know, see that the same way? I think that's a really important way to ensure that that continuous coaching culture gets embedded.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I totally follow you guys, and I think for me it's really about normalizing coaching. It's coaching is learning. I mean, we're never done with learning. So we ever ask ourselves, why don't we learn it? I stop coaching. Coaching is really about, you know, learning, self-development. Why would you put a stop in a way, right? So there is a commitment, but there is also that kind of, it's part of who we are, right? That kind of mindset.
Mm-hmm. That's great. Yeah. So I am going to move us now on to the next section, which is talent management. So, you know, from, you know, the work we all in our own coaching practices, but also what we do with our EZRA clients, whether you're a coach on Focus or Classic or EZRA X, we all really understand the importance of the manager and in sort of the role of the direct reports of participants and the vital role that they play. So this question, I'll start with Troy on this, is how can managers best support the growth of their direct reports or their teams in general?
Mm-hmm. So managers could really support their teams and empower them. Again, going back to what we were just saying a second before, right? If they're leaning to a coaching lens, right? And so obviously, if you're a people manager, you have directors and people, you have to be directive in a lot of sense, right? But from a development standpoint and getting the best out of your team, right? When managers lean to a coaching perspective, right? Because most managers got into the space of being a people manager because when I was an IC, right, individual contributor, I did well. Now I got moved up, and a lot of times people got moved up, but they didn't necessarily get moved up and get empowered what it means to lead, right, and what it means to get the best out of others. They got moved up because they were great at what they did, and so now it's a different skill set. And so how do I get the best out of others and not say, hey, why isn't Nelson doing as well as I did? Now is how can I get the best out of Nelson for who Nelson is, right? And so that's leaning to a coaching philosophy, right? That's also empowering others. And then over time, as you're creating that culture that could bubble out to the whole organization, now managers could lean back and be more in that strategic space, whereas fundamentally where the companies would want them anyway.
Great. Gina or Assunta, anything to add?
I'd say that's well said. Really leaning into knowing the team. You know, as Troy said, if I know Nelson, that's a big part of it. It's of building that trust, of being able to, and the coach approach allows Troy, you know, in that scenario, to ask Nelson questions to figure out, you know, what drives him, what motivates him, what's he passionate about. You have to know these things about your team, I think, to really be effective at leading them and empowering them. I always like to say, if you're a great manager, your team can be left while you're on vacation for 2 weeks and you're completely out of contact with them, because there's that trust in them, because you've managed their expectations that well, and you have that confidence, and that role modeling of that trust, I think, is absolutely fundamental to the relationship of empowering the team as well. You know, I always shy away from anything that says that workplace is like your family, but I will say it's kind of like parenting, in that people don't really pay attention to what you say so much as they watch what you do. So the role modeling of the need to build trust, soliciting feedback, sharing that vulnerability, and really getting to know people on a personal level, I think that demonstrates, this is, you know, how much I believe in you and I want to know about you, and then therefore I can empower you. And that's what leads to achieving through the team, as opposed to the way I did as an individual contributor.
Mm-hmm. That's great.
Yeah, but I do like the analogy with parenting, actually, you know, because it is a little bit like that, right? So to create that trust, but really that psychological safety,
Yes.
where you know that people can talk and they don't are judged, or they feel safe, basically, to share their opinions, their ideas. So it's really about making space for people to be able to be themselves, which sounds like almost cheesy, but actually it's true, right? So we do retain people when they can be themselves, they can be authentic. In fact, the majority of people, they tend to leave companies because they can't be themselves. They feel tight in the space, in the company. So it's, again, going back to what Troy said, it's coaching philosophy, right? So kind of asking those open questions, create the space, the silence, the listening.
Mm-hmm. And so, Jacinta, I'll start with you on this one. What do you see as the biggest challenges organizations face in integrating coaching into their talent management process or processes?
Um, it's probably going back to the idea that we mentioned earlier, resistance, fear. Um, we've always done things in a certain way. So why introducing something that might work? We don't know. There is an investment, there is a commitment. And I think there is also an element of vulnerability. I think, you know, thinking to introduce coaching. So what is it that we're doing wrong? You know, the idea that coaching is fixing, so it's only for fixing things. Instead of thinking we're never done learning, and actually coaching is a tool for learning, and that can go. I think I read somewhere some time ago, one of the skills that companies we always look for, especially in the next few decades, is learn to learn. So that kind of being able to reinvent ourselves continues to learn something. And I think probably one of the resistance is, oh, something new. We might be spoiled too much, or what is it that we're doing wrong that we're not offering or we're not giving? So basically, it's like a mindset and limiting beliefs, speaking, you know, in coaching terms.
Yeah, absolutely. Gina, how do you tailor coaching approaches to fit the needs of diverse talent pools?
I'm going to say something that might be controversial here and say, I don't really think you need to do that. If the coaching is working the way, like if coaching is coaching, it's doing the coaching that coaching needs to do, that in itself creates a very customized container. I think what's needed is the access for diverse populations. Coaching has traditionally been limited to, you know, C-suite levels, perhaps senior leadership, if you've been blessed enough to be in a high potential pool, but those are not necessarily systemically open and accessible to all, right? Oftentimes, for example, to be a high potential employee, it may be based on your, which can be subjective as well, your performance evaluation, but it's often up to a sponsorship type of process where someone needs to elect you, right? So you need to be kind of within the vision of and in the good graces of those who are in a position of power to do that. That can leave out traditionally, historically marginalized populations. So I think the question is not about customizing the coaching for them. You can have certain objectives, and those are, business goals that you want to align to that the coach can be aware of. But that container of coaching itself is customizable to the person in front of you. So I think the key is to actually ensure that you can get a diverse population of coachees in front of you, and then let coaching do its coaching thing. Let the professional coach, work their magic within that amazing paradigm, and it will be customized by its very nature.
Yeah, it's great insight. Troy or Asunta, anything to add to that?
No, I check everything she just said is really about the coaching process is the coaching process, right? And it can be powerful and empowering for anyone that is want to engage in it, and any company that brings it in. But it's really about what she said is about accessibility and letting the process, unfold from there.
So we are going to move on to exploring diversity in leadership. So I will start with Gina with the first question. How does diversity within leadership teams influence their approach to decision making?
It can be really influential if that diversity is allowed to do its thing, if it's properly leveraged. So I think we need to be mindful of the presence of diverse people does not necessarily equate to diversity in decision making. Things like groupthink, unconscious biases, assumptions that if I express a divergent opinion, which is really what I could be leveraged for because I am a diverse person in the room, then I might be in danger of losing my spot in this room, my seat at this table. Sometimes prevents that diverse thinking from actually being harnessed in such a way that it could be truly productive and impactful for companies. When people feel safe, to go back to what Asunta was saying earlier about that psychologically safe space, when they think I can express something that is in complete contradiction to what the leader says at the front of this boardroom right now, and still feel like everyone in this room will respect what I say, I won't be blackballed, there won't be any kind of negative pejorative consequences to me expressing that opinion, that's when diversity can become an amazing boon for innovation. The key is to make sure that it's not stymied or blocked because people feel that if they express something that is out of the norm space of what has already been the way things have been done, that's going to be somehow dangerous and career limiting. So I think the key is just ensuring people are safe to do that, and then it can be super progressive and productive for companies. It's been shown statistically that if that is harnessed, the levels of innovation and the levels of actual profits increase exponentially.
Asunta or Troy, anything you want to add?
Yeah, it's just everything that you said here really resonates with me, especially the word safety, right? But even just thinking about diversity in a way that it does imply that in diversity there are different qualities, right? That we're bringing on the table. So those different qualities will bring different opinions, and then innovation, creativity. I mean, there is all kind of reflection on idea what it means bringing diversity right to the table. How could that influence final, decision? What makes me, what I'm thinking is really the idea of curiosity, right? And how embracing diversity makes us curious, because in reality we are conscious of our own biases, we're conscious of our own lens. What happens in fact to embrace diversity and we look at that in a completely different way. That's where innovation really happens.
And I would just quickly add, having that diverse leadership team, like both my colleagues just said beautifully, right? And that diversity could be like race, ethnicity, gender, neurodiverse, right? Differently able, etc., right? And so it gives that another reason, and I think Dr. Gina touched on it, it gives that huge advantage because different approaches, right? And the lens one might approach problems with differently, right? And that prevents that that silo thinking, that which of course stops creativity and innovation. And actually, organically, when you have diversity in leadership, it not only becomes a retention tool organically, it also can become a recruiting tool as well too, because you don't have to tell people, hey, we're diverse, people can see it.
Mm-hmm. So Troy, on that, how do you measure the success of diversity initiatives in leadership roles?
How do you measure it? And successful? Well, again, you just have to look at kind of how are you going to define diversity first, right? And if you're defining diversity as who we're reaching out to, what pool are we pulling from, and especially even internally, right? Who has accessibility, right? And so obviously there's easy ways to look at metrics, right? But the challenge is when you purely look at metrics, right? In terms of, do we have enough people that look like this or look like that, right? It can skew on the side of performative, right? And so, it's really about doing a deep dive and taking a look at your culture. You do have to look at metrics, right, to at a baseline to measure it. But also, when you start to tie things into performance evaluations, right? People having seats at the table, things of that nature. And then that's when you start to see a shift and a change, right? And it goes back to what I said a couple questions ago. It starts with a commitment, right? It starts with a commitment in a company and a vision that we're here and we're going to go over there. And in the middle, it's going to be a little rough patch. Are we okay with that?
Mm-hmm.
I would add to that. I would borrow from your previous answer too, Troy. I think succession and retention will tell you a lot about that too, because when you are just bringing in diversity, but it's not being promoted, that those diverse folks don't feel like they're being welcomed. They feel like, I love what you said before, Sunta, they feel tight. Oh, that gave me a perfect feeling. If you feel tight, you're not going to stay in an organization. What your talent pipeline looks like, right? Who's up for succession to those leadership roles. That's when you can actually see tangibly the outcomes of diversity and inclusion, because diversity is a thing, inclusion is the actions that we're taking towards actually, making that diversity stick, making it belong, so that people have that feeling. And I think that's another sense, is that feeling is often expressed in employee engagement surveys. I love to look in those, right? How are people actually thinking and feeling about coming to work here? What do they see as their future in this organization? And a lot of that has to do with the way it's being measured, as Troy said, the way that people are being held accountable from the very top level down, the way that messaging is being delivered, that this matters and it will hit you, on your evaluation, which hits people in their pocketbooks. To really just demonstrate its importance, that it's not a bolt-on. This is a fundamental embedded part of our talent management system.
I think it's such a tricky question, actually, to think about measurement, diversity, because I think, Troy, you said depends how we define diversity. I wonder, if we can measure it based on, I don't know, how many languages they're speaking at the table, or what soft skills they've been kind of showing and developing, which does show, for example, there is enough psychological safety for people to show empathy or compassion, or it's diversity too, right? So to be able to actually not just focus on technical skills, but being able to develop other skills, or again, that kind of safety, as we said, we talk a lot about neurodiversity. How does that show up, for example, in company? Can we see that? Can we measure that? Are people, safe enough to be able to they want to be who they are, so not neurotypical, for example? It's really a tricky question, actually, Nelson, thinking about the concept itself of measuring diversity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we could go on and on with, I have so many more questions about exploring diversity and leadership, but because of time and because I am getting a bunch of questions from the audience, which is great, we're going to jump into some of their questions with the last few minutes that we have here. So open to everyone, so anybody jump in. Question number one, we often talk about aha moments people have with their coach. As a coach, what's an aha moment you've had while coaching?
Mm.
Great question.
I've had aha moments when I relate really closely to what my coachee is saying, and I'm being triggered, and I have to sort of detach and step back for a second. And sometimes it's leading me as they're talking through what they're doing to address their situation. It's leading me to think I could have addressed when that happened to me a different way too. Wow, I'm learning something here. And I love that reciprocal moment of aha is super cool.
Yeah, me too. Actually, the moment of collusion almost. You feel like you're colluding with your coachee. It's not, this is me. And then you kind of need to step back and say, okay, let's just look it from another lens.
Yeah, I have nothing to add. That's a perfect answer. That's one of the most powerful ones where you get triggered and kind of remember what seat you're in. But that's the beauty of coaching as well too. How much you learn from your clients as well too.
Absolutely. Next question. What's a trend in the coaching space that you see that you are excited about?
Ooh. For me, which I see is very much coaches working more somatically. So really not just coaching cognitive level, but looking at the whole body and being aware really what's going on in the body and their body as coaches and the coachee. And I think that is such an essential element, maybe because I coach, like for me it's really important looking at the body and how we feel it, where we feel it. And I think it's a trend that I'm seeing, and I think it's becoming more and more important in the sphere of well-being, of resilience, and everything we're talking about.
I would say quickly, team coaching,
Mm.
right? Just seeing more. So if I work with a company, individuals, but if a company say, hey, we want to go more of a team route, so I'm seeing more. I'm definitely seeing companies leverage that as well.
Yeah. Anything, Gina? Anything to add?
It was kind of triggered when Asunta was sharing her response, the more holistic approach to coaching, I would say, just looking at all of the different overlapping and intersecting identities that a coaching client has and taking that into account when approaching it. And I was thinking about Troy's response too, because I love that it's getting more and more popular to do team and group coaching. And I was just thinking about how do we mesh those things? Like, can we look more holistically when coaching teams and groups as well? So yeah, I think all these things are really exciting, especially when they interact with one another.
Yeah, for sure. I find like I started coaching about 12, 13 years ago and walking into meetings with L&D or HR executives, where just even conversations about work-life integration or were much more difficult. And now, whether even just launching programs here and seeing, moments and things around empathy and connection and words that are much more are just, less than the technical, practical element, which are all important, but, seeing, like you said, like much more of a holistic approach and transformational approach across like people's work and life.
I'm really digging psychological hygiene right now. I'm really diving into that and looking at coaching as, an incredibly integral part of our regular psychological hygiene.
Yeah. Got a couple time for maybe one or maybe two more questions. So what are some of the most common topics that arise in your coaching sessions? Are they industry specific or are they universal?
I would definitely say, or at least in my experience, universal, right? And from the IC level to the C-suite or teams, right? It's a sense of overwhelm, lack of a sense of overwhelm, trying to make decisions, how all this come together, trying to figure it out, right? And these are all elements of what I call lack of capacity, right? And so a lot of my work, I look at it as helping clients develop capacity, right? So they can get leverage on themselves. But yeah, for me, it would be a universal.
I'd agree with the universal. And from IC right up to C-suite, who am I and what do I want to be when I grow up? Like right through life, people ask themselves over and over that question, especially in times of overwhelm. Like, is this, when I'm overwhelmed, do I really want to be doing all this to tread water here? Is this who I am? Is this who I want to be? Is this where I want to stay? So I think that's very universal, completely industry agnostic.
Totally agree. I think purpose, especially after the pandemic, actually, it's been a search and reflection around purpose. Who am I? Where do I want to go? What do I want? Especially now that we're looking at our lives, we feel so busy all the time. And that really is across nations, gender, age, anything. That sense of busyness and how to navigate that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, all really great trends. Yeah, I see a lot in my coaching. A lot of stuff around communication and confidence, but really around having difficult conversations. So how to give constructive feedback or critical feedback, but do it in a way that can be really heard, and creating an open space for it rather than just delivering it. Here's my word, and here's how it goes. And a lot of, I think what Gina said and what all you said is like, who am I? Who am I? Who am I going to be in a group? And who am I being? And trying to channel things out from just seeing past the content and into more of the context of what's actually going on. What am I actually triggered about? What am I upset about? Whatever. What are the real things that are actually going on? So definitely see a lot of that, those conversations. Yeah. We are running right on to the end of time here, so I think I am going to just stop it there. Assunta, Dr. Gina, Troy, thank you so much for the collaboration and for being a part of our International Coach Week here and bringing some great insights into the audience, our LinkedIn audience, and for all the amazing work you do in your own businesses, but with EZRA, with all our participants that you get to work with. And a special shout out to Sarah Rosen for putting this all together for us today. So we'll see you all back another time for some more LinkedIn live events at some point soon. All right. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.